The hall of the Galactic Council was larger than any battlefield Elias Ward had ever seen. The ceiling rose so high it faded into glowing mist, and the floor beneath his boots shimmered like liquid glass. Tall figures from dozens of species filled the chamber, their shapes strange and powerful, scaled diplomats, towering beings of stone and light, creatures with too many eyes and voices that echoed without mouths. Elias stood alone at the center. He wore his standard human military uniform, cleaned but old, the fabric marked by years of use. It felt small in this place, like he had walked into a storm wearing only a coat meant for rain. He kept his back straight anyway. Humans had learned long ago that courage did not come from size. Only weeks earlier, he had been on the ash-covered world of Karos 9, holding a broken line with fewer than 50 soldiers against an enemy that did not believe humans could endure. The Virelian Dominion had surrounded the last evacuation zone, confident that exhaustion and fear would finish what their weapons could not. They were wrong. Elias did not think of himself as a hero. He had simply refused to retreat when retreat meant extinction for the people behind him. He had adapted, improvised, and endured. When supplies ran out, humans rationed. When shields failed, they dug deeper. When hope faded, they stood anyway. That was how the war ended, not with a final attack, but with the Virelians realizing that humans would not break. Now, Elias waited for his reward. He expected a medal, maybe land on Earth, a quiet life. That was what soldiers dreamed of when the noise finally stopped. A deep tone echoed through the chamber, silencing every voice. The High Arbiter of the Council, an ancient being of silver skin and slow-burning eyes, leaned forward. "Captain Elias Ward of Terra," the Arbiter said, its voice layered with harmonics. "Step forward." Elias obeyed. "You are summoned here not as a conqueror," the Arbiter continued, "but as one who preserved the future of another species." Elias frowned slightly. He had heard words like this before, wrapped in speeches and honors. He waited. "The Virelian Dominion follows laws older than your sun," the Arbiter said. "When their royal line is preserved by an outsider, a bond must be offered." Murmurs spread through the chamber. Elias felt a strange tension crawl up his spine. The Arbiter turned one glowing eye toward the Virelian delegation. Tall, elegant beings with pale blue skin and long, glowing markings stood in silence. At their center was a figure unlike the rest. She stepped forward, Princess Celira. She was taller than Elias by nearly a head, her posture straight and calm. Her eyes, bright and faceted like cut crystal, studied him with sharp intelligence. She wore ceremonial armor not for war but for authority. "The bond," the Arbiter declared, "is the princess herself." The word struck Elias harder than any explosion. The chamber erupted in noise, outrage, shock, disbelief. Elias did not hear most of it. His mind struggled to understand what had just been said. A person was not a reward, not to him, not to humans. He opened his mouth, then closed it again. His training told him to speak carefully. His instincts told him to run. Princess Celira raised one hand. The chamber quieted at once. "I am not being given," she said calmly. "I am choosing." Her gaze never left Elias. "I have studied the human who stood when surrender would have been logical," she continued. "I wish to understand the species that taught my people the meaning of endurance." Elias swallowed. He felt every eye in the chamber turn toward him. "I didn't save your future for this," he said quietly, his voice carrying farther than he expected. "I saved it because letting people die when you can stand is wrong." A ripple passed through the crowd. Celira's expression changed, not offended but curious. "Then you are more dangerous than I was told," she replied. The Arbiter watched them both carefully. "The bond does not demand ownership," it said. "It demands alliance." Elias exhaled slowly. Alliance was a word he understood. Still, the weight of what was being asked pressed on him like gravity. "I need time," Elias said. The Arbiter inclined its head. "You shall have it, But know this, by our laws, you have already altered the fate of this galaxy. The session ended shortly after. Elias was escorted through halls of light and sound to a private chamber prepared for him. The doors sealed with a soft hum, leaving him alone. He sat on the edge of the resting platform and stared at his hands. He had faced alien armies without fear. But this felt heavier. A chime sounded. "Enter," Elias said. The doors opened and Princess Celira stepped inside alone. She dismissed the guards with a gesture and stood across from him. For a long moment, neither spoke. "You look disappointed," she finally said. "I look confused," Elias answered honestly. "There's a difference." She considered that. "On my world, rewards are symbols, not possessions." "On mine," Elias said, "people aren't symbols." Celira nodded slowly. "That is what fascinates me." She walked closer, not invading his space, but near enough that he could see the fine patterns of light along her skin, marks of status and lineage. "You could refuse," she said. "It would shame my people, but it would not be forbidden." Elias looked up at her. "And what would you choose?" She paused. That hesitation told him more than words. "I would choose to learn," she said at last. "Humans survived because they adapt. My people survive because we endure tradition. Perhaps the future requires both." Elias leaned back, staring at the glowing ceiling. "I didn't ask to be important," he said. "No one who truly is ever does," Celira replied. Silence returned, but it was different now, less tense. Outside the chamber, the galaxy shifted. News spread fast. Some species were furious. Others were curious. A few were afraid. A human soldier had not just survived a war. He had become a question the universe could not ignore. And this was only the beginning. Elias' war did not sleep much after the announcement. The chamber given to him was comfortable by any standard, yet his mind refused rest. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw the faces of soldiers who had trusted him on Karos 9. They had followed him because he was steady, because he made choices that kept people alive. Now the galaxy expected him to play a role he never trained for. When he finally rose, the light outside the tall windows had shifted to a pale blue glow, marking the start of a new galactic cycle. A soft signal sounded, and an aide from the council waited to escort him. Elias straightened his uniform and followed without a word. The corridors were alive with motion. Delegates passed in groups, some whispering openly while others stared at him without shame. He heard fragments of speech: fragile species, dangerous precedent, unexpected strength. None of it surprised him. Humans were still new here. People feared what they did not understand. Princess Celira waited at the entrance to the cultural forum, a vast space designed for dialogue rather than judgment. She stood with her hands clasped behind her back, posture calm, expression unreadable. When she saw Elias, she inclined her head slightly. "You came," she said. "I said I would listen," Elias replied. "That's not the same as agreeing." "That is already more than many would offer," she said, and gestured for him to walk beside her. Inside, the air shimmered with translation fields. Representatives of several major powers were present, including rivals of the Virelians. Elias could feel the tension like static before a storm. A tall being of layered crystal spoke first. "The human stands where ancient law does not expect him. Why should the galaxy accept this bond?" Elias felt eyes turn toward him again. He took a slow breath. "I'm not here to replace your traditions," he said. "I'm here because your war almost destroyed people who didn't deserve it. Humans stood in the way, that's all." Murmurs followed, some dismissive, some thoughtful. Another delegate spoke, its voice sharp. "Humans rely on emotion, that makes them unstable." Elias nodded once. "Yes, we do, that's why we don't quit easily." Princess Celira watched him closely, her gaze thoughtful. The discussion lasted for hours. Elias answered questions honestly. When he didn't know something, he said so. When accused, he didn't defend himself with pride but with fact. Slowly, resistance shifted, not gone but changed. Humans were strange, but they were consistent. After the session, Celira led Elias through a quieter passage. "You handled that well," she said. "I just told the truth," Elias replied. She looked at him. "That is rare among leaders." They began to spend more time together after that, not ceremonies but conversations. Celira showed him records of Virelian history, centuries of order, stability, and slow change. Elias shared stories of Earth, of wars fought and mistakes made, of rebuilding again and again. "You break often," Celira observed one day. "We do," Elias agreed. "But we also fix things." She considered this as they watched traffic streams flow outside a high balcony. Ships of every shape crossed paths without collision, guided by trust in shared rules. "The galaxy fears chaos," she said. "So do humans," Elias replied. "We just learned that avoiding it completely is impossible." Not everyone was watching quietly. In the shadowed levels of the council complex, resentment grew. Some saw the human not as an ally but as a threat to balance. Whispers turned into plans. The attempt came during a public assembly meant to symbolize unity. Elias stood beside Celira as representatives gathered. Music filled the hall. Light danced across the walls. Elias felt it before he saw it. A shift, a wrongness. He moved without thinking, stepping slightly in front of Celira just as a concealed device activated. The sound was sharp, sudden, but not explosive. A field destabilizer, designed to collapse a target's protective barrier. Elias grabbed Celira and pushed her aside as the device failed to find its intended mark. Security surged forward. The attacker was restrained within seconds. The hall fell silent. Elias realized his hands were shaking only after it was over. Celira looked at him, eyes wide, not with fear but something deeper. "You reacted faster than my guards," she said quietly. "I've had practice," Elias replied. The incident changed everything. Elias was no longer just a symbol. He was involved, protected, watched. Later, in a private chamber, Celira faced him. "You could have been harmed," she said. "So could you," Elias answered. "That's kind of the point of standing together." She studied him for a long time. "On my world, rulers are protected by distance. You close that distance without hesitation." "That's human," he said simply. From that day on, Celira began to challenge her own traditions openly. She spoke of adaptability, of shared responsibility. Some elders resisted, but others listened. The galaxy watched as something new formed, not dominance, not surrender, but cooperation. Elias still did not see himself as important. He missed Earth. He missed quiet. But he also saw something forming that he could not ignore. For the first time since the war, the future did not feel like something to fear. It felt like something to build. And unseen by most, forces that preferred the old order began to move, preparing one final test, for the human who refused to stay small and the princess who dared to change. The balance of the stars had shifted, and there would be no going back. The days after the attack passed with a strange calm, the kind that felt fragile, like glass before it shattered. Elias Ward noticed it immediately. The smiles from diplomats were tighter. Conversations stopped when he entered a room. Security around Princess Celira doubled, then tripled. The galaxy had accepted that he was no longer an outsider. That acceptance came with danger. Elias spent most of his time training again. Not because anyone asked him to, but because it kept his mind steady. In a secured hall designed for many species, he ran drills alone, practicing movements his body remembered better than his thoughts. Humans survived by preparation. It was habit, not heroism. Princess Celira watched him one evening from the observation platform above the hall. She had dismissed her advisors early, claiming fatigue. In truth, she wanted to see the human when he was not speaking, not defending, not representing anything except himself. He moved with efficiency, not elegance. Every action had purpose. When he stopped, breathing hard, he wiped sweat from his brow and looked up, surprised to see her. You don't rest much, she said as she descended. Old habits, Elias replied. If you slow down too much, things catch up, she walked beside him. On Viral, we believe stability comes from stillness. On Earth, Elias said, stillness usually means something's wrong. She considered that, then gave a small, thoughtful nod. They walked in silence for a while. Outside the transparent wall, stars burned calmly, uncaring. The council is divided, Celira said at last. More than before. I figured, Elias replied. People don't like change when it doesn't ask permission. She stopped and faced him. They are afraid of you. Elias laughed softly without humor. I'm not that impressive. That is exactly why, she said. You don't seek power, yet it gathers around you. Before he could answer, an urgent signal cut through the hall. Celira's expression hardened instantly. A guard's voice came through the channel, controlled but tense. Princess, Captain Ward, emergency session, immediate attendance required. They arrived at the council chamber to find chaos barely restrained. Holographic projections showed fleet movements near the outer systems. Several border worlds had gone dark. A rival coalition had acted. They accused the council of corruption, an aide explained quickly. They claim the human alliance threatens galactic balance. Elias scanned the data. This isn't posturing, he said. They're mobilizing for real. Celira stepped forward, her voice clear and steady. Then they will listen to reason. Elias looked at her. Or they're counting on us trying. The emergency debate was fierce. Some demanded immediate separation of Elias and Celira, believing it would calm tensions. Others argued that retreat now would prove weakness. Elias listened until he could no longer stay silent. May I speak? He asked. The chamber hesitated, then allowed it. I'm a soldier, Elias said. Not a ruler, but I know this. When someone threatens force, they're testing resolve. If you abandon allies to feel safe, you teach the galaxy that pressure works. A heavy silence followed. Celira met his eyes. In that moment, a choice passed between them without words. The council voted. Narrowly, they would stand together. The response was not immediate war, but something more dangerous. Uncertainty stretched thin. Negotiations were open, but the rival coalition delayed, probing for weakness. Small incidents flared along trade routes. Panic spread among lesser systems. Elias proposed something no one expected. Send me, he said. Alone. Celira turned sharply. No. Hear me out, Elias said calmly. They don't trust councils, they don't trust symbols, but they understand soldiers. I'll go without weapons, without threats, just talk. It's a trap, someone argued. Maybe, Elias said. But if they wanted me gone quietly, they'd have tried harder already. Celira stared at him, conflict clear in her eyes. You are not expendable. Elias smiled faintly. No one is, but humans step forward anyway. Against strong opposition, the plan was approved. The meeting took place on a neutral station at the edge of controlled space. Elias arrived alone, wearing his uniform and nothing else. No guards, no escort. Across the chamber stood representatives of the coalition, powerful, ancient species who had shaped the galaxy long before humans existed. You stand boldly for something so small, one said. Elias nodded. We hear that a lot. They questioned him for hours. Why did humans fight wars they could not win? Why did they protect others at cost to themselves? Why refuse hierarchy the galaxy accepted? Elias answered simply. Because if we don't, he said, then survival isn't worth much. The turning point came when one delegate asked quietly, would you sacrifice your place among the stars to prevent another war? Elias did not hesitate. Yes. That answer spread through the chamber like a shockwave. The coalition withdrew their fleets within days. Not because they feared humans, but because they finally understood them. When Elias returned, Celira met him at the docking platform. For the first time since they met, she abandoned protocol and embraced him briefly. You should not have gone, she said. I had to, Elias replied. Somebody needed to prove we meant what we said. The galaxy changed slowly after that, but it did change. Alliances reformed. Councils restructured. Humans were no longer seen as fragile newcomers, but as anchors steady under pressure. Elias declined every title offered. He accepted one role only: liaison, bridge, listener. Celira ascended fully to her position, ruling not with absolute certainty but with openness. Her people resisted at first, then adapted, just like humans. On a quiet observation deck months later, Elias stood beside her, watching distant stars. "You never took the reward they promised," Celira said softly. Elias shook his head. "I did." She looked at him, confused. "A future where we choose what comes next," he said. "That's enough." The stars burned on, silent witnesses. Humanity had not conquered the galaxy. It had earned its place in it, and for the first time the universe felt a little less cold.